the High Court ruling to overturn federal abortion rights, allowing individual states to decide the issue amongst themselves. The decision sparking intense outrage among pro-choice advocates, while pro-life lawmakers like Marjorie Taylor Greene praise the decision.
I would like to say to Newsmax, praise God that this has happened. And this is a true blessing. The Supreme Court justices, they courageously showed exactly what needed to be done so that states can, states have the right to make their own laws, which is perfect. Okay.
All right, time for a master class. Alan Dershowitz is a legal legend and the host of the podcast The Dersh Show. He is also the author of The Case for Colorblind Equality in an Age of Identity Politics. Welcome, Professor. Thank you for joining us today. We are hearing a lot today from folks talking about stare decisis and preserving court precedent. Also, those who say Roe was always bad case law. What say you? Did the Supreme Court make the right decision here in Dobbs?
They made the decision they didn't have to make. But when Mississippi sought review in the Supreme Court, they said you don't have to overrule Roe versus Wade. The only issue is whether a ban on abortion after 15 weeks is unconstitutional. What the Supreme Court did is engage in outrageous judicial activism. They reached out to decide an issue not before them. They violated their own constitutional powers. The Supreme Court has the power only to decide cases and controversies. They do not have the power to issue advisory opinions. And this is a self-inflicted wound. What we're seeing on the streets is absolutely unnecessary. All the Supreme Court had to do was follow Chief Justice Roberts' statements. Roberts wrote an opinion saying the issue of Roe versus Wade is not before us. It's only 15 weeks. But these agenda-driven 5 judges decided they had to reach out and decide that issue improperly, not before them. So without even deciding whether Roe versus Wade should or should not be overruled, this was not the case to do it. That's simple. And the Supreme Court should never, never have decided whether to overrule Roe versus Wade in a case not presenting that issue.
Professor, I want to push back on you a little bit. Plessy versus Ferguson,
Sure.
Of course, allowed for racial segregation. The Supreme Court ruling that it was constitutional. That was case law for decades in this country. As long as you had separate but equal facilities, that was overturned by Brown v. Board of Education. Should that case law not have been overturned?
No, it should have been overturned for a very simple reason. The case of Brown versus Board of Education squarely presented that issue, whereas this case didn't present that issue. If, in fact, Plessy versus Ferguson was challenged on the ground of, gee, maybe they should be allowed to go on buses but not on trains, that would be a different issue. In this case, the issue of whether to overrule Roe versus Wade was not presented. So I'm not saying that precedent always governs. What I'm saying is judicial restraint always governs, that courts should never, whether liberal or conservative, become activists and reach out and decide cases not before them. They would have had to decide Roe versus Wade eventually, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. But what they should have decided yesterday is the Mississippi statute banning abortion after 15 weeks is constitutional. End of opinion. Wait for our next opinion until a state passes a law saying no abortion, then we'll decide that case. The Supreme Court improperly reached out in an act of judicial activism, decided a case not before it.
Real quick, Professor, 30 seconds left. The late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg disagrees with you, or disagreed with you. She thought that Roe was bad case law. Why was she wrong?
She was not necessarily wrong, but she would never have decided the case in a case not before it. The issue is not whether Roe was wrong. The issue is whether this is the case to decide that. Right now, all the court had to do was say 15-week limitation is okay, but they rushed to judgment and they decided a case that was not properly before them. And that has been it would have been so much better to do this gradually. Even if you're going to accept Justice Ginsburg's view and overrule Roe versus Wade, you do it in steps. You first say 15 weeks. Then there's a case that says, well, morning after pills are okay. Okay, you uphold that. And eventually you'll have to reach the issue of whether Roe versus Wade was or was not proper. This was not the case to do it. And so it doesn't really involve Ginsburg's view or my view. I was also skeptical of Roe versus Wade. But this is not the case to make that decision. You wait until you have to make a decision overruling a prior case. That's what judicial restraint is all about. Conservatives claim they like judicial restraint, but they like it for me, but not for thee. They only like judicial restraint when it supports their views. They don't want to generalize and apply judicial restraint. Chief Justice Roberts, who's conservative, was absolutely correct.
Alan Dershowitz, we appreciate your perspective on this. Thank you for joining us.
And I appreciate you allowing me to present a different perspective from that which is generally on Newsmax. That's what's great about Newsmax. All different views are accepted.
Absolutely. Yeah. All different views accepted here on Newsmax and welcomed. Well, stay